Hello everybody and welcome to my half-an-hour webinar on top tax tips. This is aimed at people who are sole traders, franchisees and business owners, perhaps in the first few years of trading. My name is Emma Austin. I am an accountant by training. Until 8 years ago, I'd always worked in industry as first of all a branch accountant, then a financial controller, and then a finance director of a mid-sized group. And then 8 years ago, when I had 3 children, my youngest was just coming up to 4, I decided to set up my own business and coincidentally get a puppy. And here we are, 8 years down the line. My business has grown every year. I now have a team of 7 employees. And the role I take is still very much on the hands-on commercial side. So I do business plans, management accounts, coaching, training, and also bespoke tax work because I'm also a chartered tax advisor. But what I'm really about is the people side of my business. I'm not the sort of accountant you want to shut in a room with a computer and an Excel and a pile of files in any way. And what I really like is working actually with new start businesses and probably have a bit of a soft spot for women launching into business because I've done it as a single parent and made it work. So that's a little bit more about me. You can see I do love my business, but there's a band of children there. I've got my eldest at university, my middle one with the blue hair in sixth form, and my little boy in secondary school, and also 3 dogs. So very busy, very fit. And I think one of those dogs, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving there, he's called Brandon. He's in the office today. And I always say I think he's the reason I stayed single because he is so loyal, so pleased to see me. He doesn't snore and he is very, very inexpensive. I love him to bits. Moving on. The most common question I get asked from any of our clients is, oh, can I claim such and such? So I get the odd email, oh, I've got a quick question, or the phone call, oh, I was thinking of buying this, can I claim it? So I just wanted to talk you through 2 rules which may help you to come to an initial conclusion about whether you can claim something. Okay, the first one is the expense wholly and exclusively for your business? Does it have 2 purposes? So HMRC would say if you're buying food or clothes for yourself, that perhaps you need those in most circumstances because you are a human being and not because you're in business. So when people ask me whether they can claim clothes, I will tend to talk about wholly and exclusively and take them back to a very famous case of a barrister who HMRC denied relief for the barrister's robes, saying that they were clothing and therefore couldn't be allowed. Now, obviously there are grey areas and I'm sure uniforms would be something we could discuss at length. But the first basic rule in terms of claiming expenses is it wholly and exclusively for the purpose of your business? So if you are travelling to work, but also dropping your child off on exactly the same journey, I think HMRC would say, well, you had to make that journey anyway to drop your child off at school, therefore you can't claim it because there's a duality of purpose. So there's your first rule, wholly and exclusively. And the second one is, in order for you to claim an expense, it needs to be a revenue expense, not a capital expense, which means revenue is gone through the company, the business, it's all used up. A revenue expense tends not to offer any enduring benefit to your business. So by contrast, a capital expense is something that isn't used up and will deliver enduring benefit over time, like a building, perhaps even a laptop or a car. Those things do not go through the books in the usual way, although there might be capital allowances that you can claim. And I would generally advise you, if you're thinking of capital allowances, to talk to an accountant because it's getting a little bit more specialist. So there's your 2 rules. If you want to claim it, just check, is it wholly and exclusively for the purpose of your trade? And is it a revenue expense, something that's going to be used up, like somebody's time, rent, broadband, something that's not there at the end of the period. Some things, though, are wholly and exclusively and revenue, and they're still blocked. You can't have them, even though you might want to. And gifts and entertaining are ones to watch for. HMRC doesn't allow really very much at all in the way of entertainment, so it is one to watch for. I would say keep your receipts, talk to your accountant, because some things might be claimable, but generally it's not one that that HMRC looks fondly upon. And the last thing, so it's wholly and exclusively, it's revenue. You're not claiming gifts and entertainment. You can claim things if you've got records and you keep them. So anyone who's in business working for themselves should, broadly speaking, expect an inspection about every 7 years. You'll end up paying lots of different taxes, so income tax, perhaps even VAT or corporation tax. And if you are registered for more than one tax, you might even get an inspection more frequently than that. So have a record of everything you claim, and at the end of the year, after you've done your accounts and your tax return, put them in a box, write the dates on the box of the year that it relates to, duct tape it shut and keep it in your loft for the 7 years. Is there anything else that we need to say there? Well, in terms of entertaining, we'll come back to it. There is a concept of subsistence. Subsistence is not entertaining. Entertaining is where you're meeting clients or suppliers. Subsistence is where you've genuinely gone and done something slightly unusual that takes you out of your usual routine, like you've gone on a training course or a franchise conference, and you have to eat when you're there and have coffee. And if there are costs involved there, they would all be claimable. There is a grey area between subsistence and entertainment. Now, I'll give you another example, and that's if you go to, say, the same school to teach a class 5 days a week, and you don't generally go anywhere else. Your place of work, you might claim, is in your home, but you're going to that same place as a sole trader on a day-by-day basis. And that you can't claim subsistence, because that would be your normal place of work. So I say this is a grey old area. If you have any specific queries as we go through this, what I would say is, why not jot them down or open your email browser, just make a note of them, and we could talk through them after this event. So, wholly and exclusively, revenue expenditure, not entertaining. Make sure you understand those, and also get an accountant to check your self-assessment return, keep records, and ask questions. Make sure if there are new things you want to claim, that you've checked them out. Now, here's some examples in the overall scheme of things that you might incur as costs you want to claim. Talk to other franchisees, talk to your franchisor. They may be able to give you examples of other costs that are also relevant to your business. When you work for yourself and you're new from, say, an employed position to a self-employed position, you may well be struck by the extent of the costs that you will need to bear. And most of them will be claimable, but not necessarily all of them. What I want to do now is just to take you through in a little bit more detail through some more contentious areas or more interesting areas, the first of which is working from home. My guess being that many of you are in fact working from home. So let's start with that. But if you have questions on anything we don't cover today, please feel free to ask. So working from home. You don't have to use one room in your home every day permanently just for business. It can literally be that you use your dining room table a few hours a day, and that is fine. What you do is you apportion the expenditure that you use in your home. and you actually have a choice. You can claim simplified expenditure. So HMRC will let you have a certain amount, I think it's £10 a month, £18 a month, or 26 pounds a month, depending on how many hours a day you work at home. And that's very simple and very straightforward. And for your scale of business, that might be roughly about right. However, some people work from home a lot, and they are giving up a lot in terms of the value of their home. You can therefore claim an apportionment of the costs of running your actual home. So we would look at what it costs you to provide your business with that amount of your home for the periods that you provide it. We need to establish the underlying facts, so look at the extent of your trade, the area of your home, and the usage. Well, that sounds like a spreadsheet. It sounds complicated, puts a lot of people off, but it can be really worth it. And if you do it properly in your first year, that calculation is then there for you, and you can just update it as, you know, rent maybe increases or your utility costs increase. So what sort of costs can you claim? Well, for a start, there are all your fixed costs. So this is if you're doing an actual apportionment of costs, not the simplified expenses. We would ask you to look at what your fixed costs are of providing your business with a home. And first of all, we'd ask you just to look at overall, over the course of 12 months, what do you personally spend on insurance, council tax, mortgage interest, rent, repairs and maintenance? They're your fixed costs. For most of us, those sort of costs may go out of the same bank account monthly, and it isn't actually too awful to download a CSV file from the bank which could itemise those costs for a 12-month period. Just a note though, that rent I've put there, that's rent that you pay. It's not some sort of notional rent that you're charging your business. What I'm trying to say here is these are the costs that you actually spend to provide your business with a home. There are also running costs that you can claim. So cleaning, heat, light and power, they're all very easy to claim, and actually if you pay for them from that same bank account, again you could download them and itemise them. And all of those costs up to this point, I would say you're going to add them all up, and we'll come back to how we apportion them. There are two slightly different costs. So water, generally, I would say don't try and claim an allowance for water. Water is something you use as a human being, and if it's just you working in your home, I think it would be difficult to argue in favour of a water charge unless your sole trade, for instance, involves doing vast quantities of laundry. Generally, the water costs in your house are going to be used on, you know, having baths, flushing the toilet, and things that are related to being a person and not running a sole trade. But as with all of these things, talk to your accountant, there may be exceptions. Telephone and broadband is one that HMRC are a little bit more flexible about. And we always have to check the current guidance, so I should say all these rules change year on year. But what they've said is there's no need to apportion those costs if the private use is not significant. So there's something where we just really need to talk to you about the extent of your trade and the extent of the personal use, but perhaps the total cost would be allowable. Now, there's a lot of grey areas in all of that, and HMRC do publish examples of what they feel is claimable. So if anyone would like me to, I can, after this webinar, if you drop me an email, send you those examples or a link to them so you can have a look through for yourselves and get a feel for it. So that's the first big item that we're talking through today. The next one is travel, and what is and is not claimable in terms of cars and travel. So the big question here is, should I be claiming mileage or should I be claiming my car running costs? So some important things to understand. you need to make a decision about that, and that decision stands for the life of that vehicle. So if you've decided that you're claiming mileage, you can't then claim your car running costs or the cost of the car. And if you're claiming the cost of the car and the running cost, you can't claim mileage. It's one or the other, and you can't switch between the two for the same vehicle. You can't claim for non-business travel, you can't claim for fines, and you can't claim for travel between your home and your base of operations. So although you might say my base of operations is my home, if on a day-by-day basis you only ever go to one other place and that place is a school where you teach, I think you would find it difficult to argue that that home to work travel is claimable. But always talk to an accountant. Other travel costs you can claim include train, bus fares, airfares, taxi fares, tolls, parking fees, even hotel rooms if you're away wholly and exclusively for the purpose of your business, and meals on those overnight trips. So you will have all of those general travel costs like parking, tolls that you can claim, and then you've got to make this decision between mileage and car running costs. So I'm going to talk about those now in a little bit more detail. So if you're claiming car running costs, here's some examples of the sort of things you're going to be claiming. So what you'll need to do is over the course of the year, keep a log of all of your expenditure in your books and records. And anything that is to do with the running of your vehicle, you will need to apportion the costs. And generally, we would use business miles versus personal miles. So you will need to log your business miles. And if you're not already doing it, I would say it's not as bad as you think. You probably don't go that many different places, and therefore if you go through your diary at the end of every week or month, you can jot down where you've been wholly and exclusively for the purpose of your business. If you're claiming mileage, you can't claim any of the other running costs, but if you're not claiming mileage, you can. So vehicle insurance, repairs and servicing, fuel, your car license fees and any breakdown cover are all costs to do with running your vehicle. If you're going down the route of claiming the cost of running your vehicle, you might also consider claiming the cost of buying that vehicle. That's where you'd have to think about capital allowances, and that is where I would say check with an accountant. So those are some car running costs. By contrast, let's talk about mileage claims. So mileage claims aren't for people who are claiming specific deductions as per the running costs for a vehicle. They're only for qualifying journeys that are wholly and exclusively for the purpose of your trade. So not when you're dropping your children off or running into town to buy some groceries and you also happen to post a letter for business. You can claim 45p a mile or 25p a mile. So if you do a lot of miles for your business, you do need to keep a really careful track. You can actually claim an additional 5 pence per mile on either of those if you are taking a passenger for the purpose of your business. So if you've got an employee or someone you need to transport. And I don't know if it's relevant to any of you, but you can also claim mileage for cycling. So if it's relevant, do keep in touch. And keep a track on your mileage as you go through the year. It's an important cost to your business. It's important that you know how you're doing and what things are costing. Much easier to do it as you go along. So far we've talked about the general rules for what you can claim, and we've talked specifically about home office costs and travel costs. The next one I wanted to touch upon, because again it's often asked by sole traders, is training and development costs. And here the guidance is reasonably clear. So we've got to think about the wholly and exclusively rule here, and specifically about startup training. So what HMRC say is if a completely new specialisation or qualification will be acquired as a result of the expenditure, it is unlikely that that expenditure can be wholly and exclusively for the purpose of the existing trade. So take, for example, Emma Austin, that's me, I'm an accountant, and say I want to, because I do, want to train as a dog training instructor, and I haven't done it yet. I don't teach any dog training classes, I'm not doing any one-to-ones. If I go and spend some money on a dog training instructor course, I can't say that I'm a sole trader and that's a claimable expense, because it's just something at this point I'd be doing for fun. However, for you guys, if you're already up and running in business and you're doing ongoing development work, continuous professional training, which you probably would need to do to stay ahead in your field, or you're deepening your knowledge and your current skills, not offering something completely new, but just going a little bit further, then my feeling is that would be a claimable expense. I'm always happy to have a chat about the scale of those costs. I think that if you decided to go and do a training course in Thailand for 6 weeks and it cost £20,000, and that's more than your total turnover in your business, that I would struggle to see that as wholly and exclusively. But I think your average training courses in this country, in your field, are probably going to be okay. So training and development is generally something actually HMRC would want to incentivise, because genuinely they want you to succeed, because then you will actually pay more tax. So things to do with research, development and training are generally incentivised. So I've covered 3 areas there: home office, travel, and training and development costs. Some general good ideas are just that you keep great books and records as you go along. You are more likely to claim all of the relevant expenditure if you make a note of it. It's often difficult to remember after the event. Put deadlines in your calendar for critical events, so the dates that you need to submit a tax return, register for self-assessment, pay your taxes. Perhaps also make a diary note of when you're going to do your bookkeeping. Strongly recommend once a week and doing a wrap-up once a month. Another good idea is to do your self-assessment return earlier in the year rather than later, just because you might remember things better if you do your tax return April, May, June. The information you need for your tax return is only going to get more murky in your mind, and the record's more difficult to find the longer you leave it. I would say get help from a qualified professional, and you'd think, well, I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm saying that because I often end up picking up the pieces where well-intentioned people have made mistakes and then got into trouble. I know professional fees can be prohibitive, so maybe start with doing as much of the work yourself as you can and just paying a professional just to do as little as possible just to support you, and then gradually as you get more successful you might use that professional more. But equally, you'll have built up the skills and knowledge as you've gone along. There'll be less that you need help with. And lastly on this, even if you use an accountant, you are still the taxpayer and you are still responsible, which I know may sound like a nonsense, but HMRC will view that you are the taxpayer. So if you're using a professional, you still have to know what you're signing, and you still need to feel capable of signing it. So they need to have helped you, that professional helped you to understand exactly what you're signing off. So you can't shirk your responsibilities and say, well, I have an accountant, they're doing it all for me. The accountant should have told me I needed to register for VAT, etc., etc. So if you are going to use an accountant, do check their qualifications. The most typical way to get an accountant is your neighbour, your auntie, your dad uses this accountant, and that's how you get in touch with them. Always check whether they are professionally qualified and registered. So like for me, I've got 2 professional registrations. I'm a chartered tax advisor and a chartered management accountant. And you can go on the websites for those associations and you can search for me and I'll be there. It's really easy to do for any accountant. I would also say if you're choosing an accountant, ask for testimonials and references, because you're going to be trusting these people and working closely with them. And there's no reason they shouldn't give you some references. Hopefully people you can call and have a chat to about how that accountant has helped those people. So lastly then, just before we finish, I would say that for me in running my own business, I did find from the start that I tried to do a lot on my own and it was a bit of a lonely place. With hindsight, I think there is a lot of support out there. If you're all franchisees, you have the support of your franchisor and all of the other franchisees. And I would say use it, absolutely. Get as much support as you can. As far as your finances go, there are free webinars. We are running a huge stream of them at the moment. Lots of accountants will have a free meeting with you before you sign up. So why not go and meet 3 accountants? Get 3 lots of free advice and then decide who you like. Because I don't know about you, I remember when I first looked around schools for my children. I'm not a teacher. The first school I looked around for my first child, I was like, well, I don't know, it's a school. Could be a good school, could be a bad school, I couldn't tell. By the time I looked round a few, I had a bit more of a feeling for what I was looking for. So do spend some time choosing a professional. And make sure you understand what you're using your accountant for, but actually what you'd use a bookkeeper for, which would be more cost efficient, or business coaches or tax advisors, or even solicitors. They all have different uses and they'll all give you a different return on investment. So I mentioned that we are running other webinars. Here are some of the more immediate ones. However, if there are any topics you particularly would like us to run, please feel free to get in touch. I'm very happy to speak directly to any areas of interest. If you'd like to have a free half-an-hour consultation with me now, please feel free to open your email browser, pop in that email address, emma.austin@enterprise-tax.co.uk, and let me know what you'd like from me, perhaps some times you'd like to meet. I am launching a new low-cost financial coaching and mentoring business. I'm happy to help you in that way, but really let me know what it is you would like and we will see what we can do. And finally, I can't finish without letting you know, because I'm very proud that myself and a team at Enterprise, we're doing a 10K race for life. I've never run before at all. It's been quite a shock for me. I've been training with my 18-year-old daughter who's also doing this run. And if you'd like to make a donation, we would be very, very grateful. So thank you all. Hope to hear from you all with your queries and your questions. Have a good evening.